Okay, good day fellow investors. This is Capitaland China Trust business updates for first quarter 2025 dated 24th April 2025. Right, we'll look quickly at the spread of their asset class. Right, mainly their retail mall with 71.4% by GRI in retail. Right, business park take up about 25% and logistics park is very small at 3.5%. Right, we'll go to their key highlights. Gross revenue is down 6.1% year on year, right? Clearly not a good thing. NPI is down 6.6% year on year. If we compare these results versus last financial year, it's not a good result because last financial year, that means the average quarterly drop is 3.9% year on year, right? Because this is a full year drop, right? So if I look at average of each of the 4 quarters, it should be roughly 3.9% a quarter on quarter drop, right? So NPI is down by 5.8% year on year, right? So both numbers in this part are a bigger drop than last financial year, right? So not a good thing. And you can see it's not like any of the quarters were anomalous, right? So I was trying to see if 4 quarters anomalously bad that dragged the results down, but it's not the case. Because if I look at 9-month results, right, it's minus 3.4% and minus 5.1%, which is pretty close to these results, right? So that means to say that you can see that number one, NPI dropped further, minus 5.8%, right, from 5.1%, and gross revenue dropped further also, right? So fourth quarter got deterioration, alright. Fourth quarter got deterioration, and looks like the deterioration is getting worse, alright. So minus 6.1% year on year, minus 6.6% year on year, right? So that's not good from the top line, down to the REIT, right? So they say that if you exclude business park service office tenant, right, what happened to this business park service office tenant? They pre-terminated at Singapore Hangzhou Science Technology Park Phase 2, right, which means that most likely they went bankrupt. Otherwise, they found some other location that is so cheap, they're willing to pay the pre-termination fee, right? Neither of which is good thing, right? So this is not a good thing, right? So if you exclude this and the supermarket upgrading, which I think this one I can accept because this I will consider this AEI, right? So they're upgrading to get more rent in the longer term, right? So this one is more palatable than the first case, which is I consider it a bankruptcy case, okay? So it will be minus 4%, minus 4.4% year on year, right? Rather than minus 6.1%, right? And of course, NPI correspondingly will be minus 4% year on year, right? So anyway, we'll go into details. Retail revenue excluding supermarket upgrading declined by 2.7% year on year due to lower rents at Capitaland Mall Sinan. Business park revenue declined by 9.6%, which is substantial year on year, largely due to lower occupancy at Singapore Hangzhou Science Technology Park Phase 2, which is likely due to be this termination of service office tenant, right? So bankruptcy, right, and Ascenders Innovation Towers, right. Logistics park improvement by 3.3% year on year, right. This is probably due to the bankruptcy last first quarter. Right, so they managed to get a new tenant. Of course, they gave them a substantial discount. But logistics is small, so don't really expect this to move the top line too much. Right, decline NPI due to gross revenue partially offset by savings in operational expense of 5% year on year for overall portfolio. Right, so generally speaking, they are saying that they're trying to save more money. Right, later I'll show you that that's a good thing for them, but they can't seem to prevent the drop in gross revenue, which is obviously a concerning thing. Right, so key milestone, this is the hope for Capitaland China Trust, right? They're going to participate in the new REIT that their parent company, right, CRI, is going to list in China, right? The thing in China is that my understanding is the REITs in China do trade closer to NAV than Capitaland China Trust, which is trading at quite a big discount to NAV. That means to say that if we sell all the assets and pay off debt, the REIT may be worth $1, but in the marketplace, right, the market only value it at maybe 70 cents, something like that. Right, so there's a big discount to NAV for Capitaland China Trust, and it is hoped that if they participate in this Capitaland Commercial C Trust listing in China, right, they can re-rate their asset values, right, in the market. Right, so it's an opportunity to enter the growing C-REIT market as a key stakeholder in CLCR, right, which is a new REIT, to broaden access to the China domestic capital market and providing unit holders with upside from C-REIT exposure. How do they plan to do this? They plan to recycle one of their malls, which is this one, into C-REIT. Basically, they're selling this mall into C-REIT. Alright, so hopefully they can sell at a decent valuation and that should actually increase the value of Capitaland China Trust, right? But I think what likely will happen is that they will take shares of C-REIT, right? So then they will sell this mall, take the shares in this REIT, right? And therefore function like a REIT that owns another REIT, right? And this may help to achieve differentiation while maintaining their existing ROFR. Okay, so they have launched a successful bond here at 2.88%. This is good because this is lower than the average cost of debt, which is I think 3.51%. Later on we'll have a look at it, right? So they are at 41% at RMB denominated debt, all right? And they want to reach 50% by December 2025, which end of this year, right? Hopefully this will help reduce cost of debt again. I'm not very happy that the cost of debt doesn't seem to be going down fast enough, all right, for me at least. Later I'll show you the details, right? So increase sustainability loans to 56%, right? That's great. Right, we look at the retail side, which is actually the main concern, right? Occupancy is 97.7%, right? It's still very strong, but I think it's lower than previously. Later on we'll have a look. Okay, greater than 99% occupancy for these malls, right? These are the strong malls. Positive rental return of 0.5% boosted by upgrading of supermarkets at these two capital malls. Right, so the supermarket upgrading to me is a good thing. Later on, I'll show you why I think it's important moving forward for this REIT. Okay, so if we exclude Xinnan and supermarket leases signed for these two malls, right, Q1 rental revision is minus 1%, right, similar to 2024. Okay, so this they registered single-digit positive rental revisions for these two categories: food and beverage and information and communications technology. Of course, the second one is likely to be boosted by government incentives, right? So I'm not sure how far this will be sustained, right? Food and beverage, I think, is the way to go for malls these days. They have to go into food and beverage to entice people, or maybe even experience to entice people to come over and try the offerings. And yeah, so anyway, minimum first order impact from tariff environment. So they have very little exposure or reliance on US imports or exports, and they primarily serve China's middle income consumers, right? So they have little reliance on US imports and exports, right? So business park oversupply, clearly not a good thing. Occupancy is only 83.7%. You can see that generally below 95%, and very poor occupancy here, right? The logistics park looks better, but we know that this one is the bankrupt logistics park tenant that moved out last year, I believe. I think beginning of first quarter last year, right? So they announced this, and they have secured a new tenant for 100% occupancy, but at a discount, right? So better that they occupy it and get some money, but that's why their top line keep dropping as well, right? Occupancy in logistics park decently good again, but it's very small, right? So again, not much exposure to tariffs, alright? So except for maybe this one, which handles export activity, but limited exposure to US markets. Right, we look at shopper traffic and tenant sales. I care more about sales because this will translate to bottom line of the tenants, and it should eventually flow down into the rental revisions, right? If sales are good, right? So year on year is minus 2.4%, right? This is not good, right? And if you look at this, they write excluding automobile sales, first quarter will have declined by 1% year on year, right? So that means to say automobile sales actually caused the decline to be higher at 2.4%, right? Then if I remove automobile sales, it will decline by 1% only. But automobile sales are big ticket items, and I expect this to be very spiky. It cannot be every year you buy a car, right? So this thing is seasonal, right? You should expect that when the seasonal effect is gone, then you should expect a bigger dip, minus 2.4%, right? And then they have a new way of reporting. Tenant sales per square meter will increase by 8% year on year. So if you take out automobile sales, tenant sales per square meter will have improved 5.8% year on year, right? If you include automobile sales, it's only plus 0.7%, right? So this, I think, a new way of reporting. Generally, I'm not particularly fond of new ways of reporting, primarily because I think normally it's to hide poor results. Okay, but this case maybe got some justification because the supermarkets are probably pretty big, right? So you have upgrading at 3 supermarkets, and because their floor space is big, right, it may distort the sales by somewhat lah. Alright, so anyway, I'm fine with this, right? If we look at tenant sales per square meter, it's actually up 0.7%, right? Because I think we should include automobile sales as part of the equation. Anyway, so if we exclude all these anchor tenants, right, first quarter year-on-year sales look better, plus 0.7%, even include the automobile sales drop, right? And per square meter is plus 4.3%. Right, occupancy cost is 17.7%, which is good. Okay, so cost management has gone up. That means to say they're saving more money. The last one I think was 18.8%, if I remember correctly. Right, the last time they highlighted, this was the last results. So occupancy cost was 18.4%. Right, so this is good. Right, and this is even lower than the pre-COVID range. So somehow they are controlling costs well lah. Hopefully not at the expense of the hygiene or the outlook of the malls, right? Which I hope lah. Okay, so anyway, financial position wise, gearing went up slightly. Alright, cost of debt is flat, right? Which this is what I'm unhappy with lah. I think the last round it dropped, right? So I believe this one was a drop from the previous case, but I don't know why it's still flat lah. I hope it's going down. I would prefer I would have been hopeful that it went down. Right, interest coverage ratio is still quite strong at 3x%. Rest not going to say, not much debt left to refinance this financial year, so not that hopeful of a big change in their debt status. I mean their cost of debt status, right? So you can see occupancy for this retail. Yeah, retail. You can see that retail is down slightly, 98.2% to 97.7%. Right, some up, some down lah. Okay, so nothing. I'm not going to say so much about that. I'm not going to care about that. Business park occupancy, again, some up, some down. It's very mixed bag, right? But generally, the overall trend, again, is a lower occupancy. So you can see both retail and business park occupancy has dropped, right? And they say it's due to oversupply lah. Okay. Logistics park also down, right? Because of this last part, right? So generally, all three sectors are actually down. Looking forward, alright, this is the hope, right? Capital Mall, Wang Jing, right? They are introducing a new concept called 7 Fresh by JD.com, as well as 20 popular retail F&B and experience brands to offer a broader product selection and revitalize customers' shopper experience, right? So I think this is important for the malls, right? They need to reinvent themselves into areas that can attract people, like all these things. So I am hopeful that they are in the right direction for the mall side. Okay. So again, this one, they have some interesting supermarket brand. Alright, I'm not super sure what is this. I'm not very familiar with China, but this BUT, alright. So anyone knows anything about this, alright, please let me know. But I like the idea. When I read it, I like the idea. It looks like animation, comics, games, attract younger generation, right? Capex borne by tenants, alright. So all these things are good things. This should drive shopper traffic, right? Hopefully it translates to sales. Right, so total rent expected to increase around 10%, so looking good, hopefully. Alright, so the other one is leasing progress, looks good, but they don't report what's the percentage, right? Finally, again, all these things coming in should help attract shopper traffic. Alright, so I'm relatively positive on the retail side, right? Not so on the other two sides, right? Beijing has boosted consumption, but all these things are likely to take time to trickle down to the spending side. So while the efforts are underway, recovery of business confidence will take time and lag is expected before effects are fully felt. Right? So that's general idea behind the mall. Alright, so with that, do give me a like if you've learned something or appreciate my efforts. Alright, remember none of this is financial advice, and thank you for listening.